Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on accelerating African-led contraceptive technology innovation. I am really excited to have you all here with us. My name is Emily Hoppus. I am a technical advisor at FHI 360 and the managing editor of the Contraceptive Technology Innovation Exchange. We would like to do a few introductions to some resources before we dive into our panel discussion today. It will be a short introduction because we have some amazing speakers to listen to today. I just wanted to take a minute to introduce you all to the CTI Exchange, the Contraceptive Technology Innovation Exchange. This is a platform designed to grow the global contraceptive research and development ecosystem through collaboration and knowledge sharing. So we're dedicated to bringing the most up-to-date information to researchers in formats that are easy to access and digest. And we're also dedicated to bringing stakeholders from the contraceptive R&D community together to connect and share ideas through events like this one. The center of the CTI Exchange is our website, ctiexchange.org, which includes news, events, and job and funding opportunity lists that are updated weekly. And the website also hosts the CTI Exchange's flagship resource, which is a contraceptive pipeline database called the CTI Tracker, where you can find information about contraceptives under development currently. These updates are also highlighted on our LinkedIn page and in a weekly newsletter that we call the Flash in Five, 5 items that are happening in the world of contraceptive R&D each week. You can use the links that my colleague Nat is providing in the chat to connect and subscribe to these different things. And then we're also excited to share that today we're launching the CTI Exchange community on WhatsApp, where we'll be sending out our weekly newsletter as we do on LinkedIn and email, as well as sharing events with one another and opportunities with the community. This community will also have a dedicated group for students and young professionals to chat and share ideas openly, and we're excited to see what other groups form and how this community grows. So you can use the QR code here and there's also a link in the chat to join right now. So this is brand new. There won't be any members yet, so please join so we can help grow the community today. And with that, I would like to hand it over to my colleague Christina from FHI 360, who would like to give you a quick introduction to one more resource that is up and coming and that we're excited to partner with in the future. Go ahead, Christina.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Vernon. As Emily said, I work at FHI 360 and I work in the same department as her. And I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about an exciting project that we're working on, funded by Gates Foundation. We're developing a contraceptive clinical research training curriculum. So, Emily, next slide. So currently, phase 1 through 3 clinical sites and trained contraceptive researchers, we feel like are largely located in the US and Europe. We understand that contributes to unequal power dynamics, presents a challenge in tapping into local expertise, and narrows geographic and ethnic compositions of study populations. So we'd love to see a diverse global network of clinical trial sites able to conduct phase 1 through 3 contraceptive trials. So this project is kind of one piece to that vision. So we're developing a e-learning training curriculum. And the plan would be it would be used by clinical trial sites in lower and middle income countries that would seek to perform contraceptive clinical trials. Um, the audience in particular for this curriculum is really site staff, so PIs, study coordinators, lab technicians, data managers, really people working at the site implementing the trials. Um, and again, we just would like to increase the number of sites located in lower and middle income countries that have the ability to conduct contraceptive clinical trials. Emily, next slide. So our input of who's been helping us with this curriculum. We have been working with FHI 360 subject matter experts. We have a global curriculum advisory group of people around the world who have, experience with contraceptive clinical trials. And we've also been working very closely with African clinical research sites, really helping us with the content for the curriculum. Emily, next slide. So the topics within the curriculum are displayed here. We've got 8 topics, or we call them modules. Um, and so we kind of felt like these were the main topics to cover, at least under this grant. And then Emily, next slide. And this slide is actually a video. So let's see if we can play it here. Maybe, yeah, down below where it's where the triangle is. Okay, wonderful. So this is just an example of um what a module would look like, a finalized module. This is our research ethics module. So we start out with an introduction, learning objectives. You'll see in this one, we do give like a brief history of research ethics, but each module is really trying to focus on contraceptive research. So this module does go into, specifically what are some considerations with research ethics, when conducting contraceptive clinical trials. So we really tried to put that focus on contraception. However, we do, open up, as you see here, with some overview of the topic. And our global advisory group really helped us think through the learning objectives and different lessons for each module. And then our sites really helped us focus in on what kind of content to put within each lesson. But yeah, just wanted to share an example of what a final module would look like. And then at the very end, we do have a final quiz. Emily, next slide. So real quick, just next steps for this project. We're hoping to finalize the curriculum and, all the modules later this year. And then next, we'll want to disseminate and promote the training curriculum, and we're hoping to start that in 2027. So Emily, next slide. I just put in who's working on this project. I put in my email here, but yeah, if you have any ideas for disseminating and promoting this curriculum, you know, would be glad to talk to you. So, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll put my email in the chat too. So yeah, thanks so much. And Emily, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you so much, Christina. This is really exciting, and I hope it will be a useful resource in the future. And if you do want to sort of stay up to date on when it is ready and how you can be involved, you can follow the CTI Exchange. We'll be promoting it through our newsletter, LinkedIn, and WhatsApp groups. So please do subscribe to all those things in the chat. I see that people are starting to introduce themselves in the chat. Please continue to do that. It's great to see so many different people from so many different organizations, and we're excited to have you here. So I would like to now turn it over to our moderator to get us started with the panel discussion. Let me introduce him first. So our moderator today is Griffins Manguro, and he is a senior program officer at the Women's Health Innovations team at the Gates Foundation. His work drives the product development of novel solutions, including point of care diagnostics and treatment for sexually transmitted infections. Additionally, he supports efforts to strengthen the talent ecosystem in women's health, aiming to build a critical mass of experts dedicated to developing and delivering innovative health solutions for women globally. So Griffins, let me hand it over to you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much, Emily, and good morning, good evening, everybody. Thanks and welcome to this webinar this morning. We have a interesting and we have a really we have a good panel of speakers this morning or this afternoon. We have four very exceptional African researchers who've contributed a lot to this space. And so I want to introduce each one of them, and then I'll ask them a few questions as part of this webinar. So the first person I want to introduce is Professor Margaret Ilomuanya from the University of Lagos. So Prof. Margaret is a professor in the Department of Pharmaceutics and Pharmaceutical Technology, and this at the University of Lagos, where she leads the Margaret Ilomuanya Laboratory. And her lab is focused on drug delivery research. Most of her work is centered on electrospinning technologies and transdermal drug delivery platforms, with applications in contraception and other therapeutic areas. So thanks so much and welcome, Margaret. Our second speaker, thank you. Our second speaker is Professor Almas Ramadhani Juma from Kenya. So Almas is a senior research scientist at the Kenya Institute of Primate Research. And her primary research interests include investigating the causes of male infertility and male contraception development. Almas is really passionate about educating the public and raising awareness on fertility and contraception. And she's working to break societal taboos to reduce stigma and empower individuals with the knowledge to make informed decisions about their reproductive health. So Almas, really nice to have you here and welcome to the panel. Our third panelist is Professor Elizabeth Bukusi. She is many things, and some of you may know her already. She's a senior principal clinical research scientist at the Kenya Medical Research Institute. She's also a research professor at the University of Washington. Her primary interests include sexually transmitted infections, reproductive health, including contraception, and HIV prevention and treatment. In addition, she is also interested in ethics and the development of systems and structures for regulating research. So Professor Elizabeth Bukusi, welcome and thank you so much for joining the panel.
Thank you.
And our fourth panelist is Busiswe Mafumulo, also known as Busi. So Busi is a nurse specialist with the VITS Maternal Reproductive and Sexual Health Unit. She holds a postgraduate diploma in public health and a Bachelor of Arts in Nursing Science, as well as diplomas in general nursing, midwifery, and neonatal nursing science from the Natal College of Nursing, and a diploma in project management. And she's currently completing her master's in public health. And her work supports clinical and research activities across the spectrum in women's health. So Busi, thank you so much. And I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I did. Okay,
Yes, thank
so
you.
I have, thank you. So I have a few questions to each one of you, and I'll ask you the same question. And we'll start with Professor Ilomuanya. Professor Margaret, could you please introduce the work you do in contraceptive research and technology and reflect on some of the challenges you faced while building your career in this space?
Thank you very much, Griffins, for that kind introduction. Well, my research actually lives at the intersection of advanced drug delivery, biomaterials, as well as nanomaterials. And my laboratory is dedicated to looking at that critical gap in product development that responds to non-hormonal contraceptive technologies, HIV prevention technologies, and basically developing products that target women's health. Now, when we look at precision engineering for development of the scaffolds that we do in my laboratory, we use techniques like electrospinning, creating polymer-based drug delivery systems like the microneedles or the polymeric films that are vaginally used in women. These, we create them not just as physical barriers, but they are designated to interact dynamically with physiological systems. And that's why a lot of the technology that we are developing could be termed biomimetic, because one of the things we try and do is to look at how these products will interact with the biological environment to provide discrete, effective, and side effect-free drug formulations that can be used as non-hormonal contraceptives. And when we look at the challenges in building this career, I mean, I've been in academia for over 16 years. So in building this career, the challenges have been multifaceted. The primary challenge is, of course, funding and continuity. When you look at research and development from the contraceptive point of view, it requires long timelines. When you go from method discovery to validation to formulation, preclinical work, and where you're successful, the regulatory landscape and eventual clinical trials. Usually funding is usually fragmented, short-term, and sometimes, we are really overcautious about early stage ideas. Keeping the momentum while also meeting our academic responsibilities like teaching, and all these other academic expectations can actually be very difficult. Then the second one is infrastructure and access. Whether it's a specialized laboratory capability or access to certain assays and platforms, or even, reliable procurement of reagents, or the ability to run advanced studies at the pace that your research field will demand. This is, a major drawback. Even when the expertise exists locally, the enabling environment can actually slow progress. And when we look at it, I'm a pharmacist by training, but we work in the field of advanced biomaterials. So there's also that interdisciplinary gap that I have also come to see. And as a pharmaceutical scientist, I sit with biologists, engineers, clinical scientists, and for us at the University of Lagos, we're really lucky to be able to have this, because in many African institutions, these silos are very hard to break, and finding specialized infrastructure to harness the silos can actually be very challenging. The third is what a lot of us, refer to as translation valley of death, where you can create a beautiful formulation, but navigating the regulatory pathway for these become very, very challenging, especially when you have things like combination products that are both device and drug. And then there isn't really always a very clear roadmap for taking homegrown African nanotechnology innovations to the manufacturing stage. But I must say that despite these challenges, one of the things that has kept me committed is impact. Contraception is not just a biomedical tool. It's tied, whether we like it or not, to our health, to women's autonomy, to access to education, and of course, economic opportunity. And I believe that innovation that is led from Africa and shaped by African scientists within our own African context can be developed and built through equitable partnerships to significantly expand contraceptive choice globally. So ultimately, my research journey has been about proving that African laboratories can be hubs for high-end material science, research, and product development. We're not just testing products developed elsewhere. We are using advanced pharmaceutics to invent new ones that are culturally and biologically relevant to our own context in sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Margaret, for a really comprehensive response. And I agree with you on the getting products from research to marketization as a major research gap. But thanks really much for a really comprehensive response. I'll move to Almas, Juma. Same question. Please introduce the work you do in contraceptive research and technology, and reflect on some of the challenges you faced in building your career at the IPR and elsewhere. So thank you so much, and over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. And I just wanted to say it's an honor and a privilege to be amongst this panel. So I'm very happy to be here to contribute. So like Dr. Manguro said, I work at the Kenya Institute of Primate Research. I actually started my research in infertility. So I did my doctorate in this area and worked on this research in Australia before relocating back to Kenya. And as Dr. Manguro said, I work as a senior scientist in the Division of Reproductive Health and Biology, has a subsection that focuses on contraception and family planning. So I'm very fortunate to work at Kenya Institute of Primate Research, which I'll refer to as KIPRE henceforth. It's the only primate research center in East and Central Africa, and we've existed for about 68 years, and we've been conducting reproductive biology using the non-human primate model since the 1970s. It started off under a WHO special program in human reproduction that involved breeding monkeys for biomedical research, specifically human reproduction research. So we've been using this excellent model to use it to understand human reproductive physiology and conditions that affect humans. We've created various disease models that mimic conditions. We've created IVF models, and we've used this model to test contraception targets, or contraception rather. So the advantage of using the baboon model for us is the high anatomic, physiological, immunological, and genetic similarities to humans, which makes it a really ideal reproductive biology model. Having said that, and without going into too much details on how we've utilized this model, I must say that we're in a prime position in terms of being an African site to conduct preclinical biomedical research and contraceptive development. And I think, Professor Margaret has already pointed out the economic challenges that exist in contraception development in Africa. But as many of you are aware, we have an extra challenge on that as well, because using non-human primates for research is very expensive, yeah? And prior to COVID, our institute, KIPRE, was buzzing with reproductive biology research, but after COVID, or during COVID, and after, the focus shifted towards infectious diseases. And so essentially funding halted on reproductive biology research in most parts of the world, more so with us. And this also meant that many researchers changed research interests, shifting towards infectious diseases research or greener pastures elsewhere, which then left reproductive biology research dying down, basically. So in the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years, things have been looking brighter. There have been calls from the Gates Foundation, from the Male Contraceptive Initiative, which I'll talk a bit more about, opportunities for us to apply for funding to revive, I would say, the reproductive biology research, including contraception research. But these grants are limited and they're very competitive, And for me specifically, having gravitated towards contraception development from male fertility, my focus is on male contraception, which presents a further challenge in terms of finding grants that specifically are targeted towards male contraception development. I was lucky enough to come across the Male Contraception Initiative at the end of 2023, and they invited me to present about the work that we do at KIPRE at the National Contraception Meeting in North Carolina last year. And that's where I got the chance to pitch our capacity as global partners in biomedical research with a focus on contraception research. Got to connect with various people, and this I guess has been the positive aspect I'm talking about that has come about recently, but we're still a long way to go. Other than that, I can say from one of the grants we applied for, we actually applied for a grant alongside a team from the US that I was connected to by the Male Contraceptive Initiative. We didn't get the grant, and part of the feedback for this is that one of the reviewers thought that we didn't have enough local expertise, and this is a tricky and sensitive subject for me because of various factors. And I hope my time is all right, Dr. Manguro. But one of the factors is that I think we do have the local expertise, so I beg to differ with the reviewer. We do have a lot of expertise down here, but many of us are trained overseas, and we come back home to try and build research here, but we have very little to work with, in terms of the number of researchers in this area, the infrastructure, equipment, and even resources to publish in highly ranked journals that would perhaps place us at a higher standing globally. So I think platforms like this webinar is very advantageous for us, because we don't only get to network, but we also get to put ourselves on a global stage, So I'm very grateful to the FHI 360 and the CTI Exchange team for this. We also, in terms of brain drain, having lost a lot of researchers who had a focus on reproductive biology venturing to other areas of interest, I think we need to build up that capacity again. and in small steps, you know, one of which is creating, I guess, consortium. Last year, Professor Meg and I and many others were invited to take part at a inaugural first in-person non-hormonal contraception meeting, or rather community of practice that took place in South Africa. And I think this was a really good step towards strengthening the local networks of researchers. And funny enough, when we got there, we found there were very many Kenyans there who we had no idea were all working on contraception within Kenya. So I think initiatives like those are important in strengthening the networks so that we can, you know, inform each other about opportunities within the field. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Almas. It's really great to hear about your work, and I agree with you on the need for stronger partnerships for contraceptive research, but really great insights. So next I'll move to EB, Elizabeth Bukusi from the Kenya Medical Research Institute. Same question. Please tell us about what you do in contraceptive research and technology, and some of the challenges you face in your career, and probably highlight a couple of opportunities you think exist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm glad I'm talking after the people working on the materials and doing the very early preclinical trials have spoken, because I'm on the other end. I'm a clinical trialist, really. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist with training in epidemiology and bioethics, as Griffins had said. And I've been on the other end, working in actual clinical trials, but also thinking about health systems strengthening. So let me talk a little bit about some of the work that I've had the privilege of being part of. We've looked at issues of, like, for example, when you do have contraception, one of the challenges that women have is partner involvement, male involvement in contraceptive options, and so on and so forth. We've done work on adolescents. How do you reach younger populations who may need contraception? Reintroducing contraceptive methods that may have sort of gone a little bit out of fashion, like the diaphragm or the IUCD, that have had challenges with many health systems because of what's needed in order to be able to ensure that these can be done. Within the health systems strengthening work, I've done a lot of work around integrating systems of providing contraception to women, providing contraception to women living with HIV, integrating clinics so that there is comprehensive, wholesome care. When women come to a facility, that we're not putting them in silos and telling them to do one thing after the other. Then we've also done work in the area of introducing new options like subcutaneous DMPA. You may have a product, it may work very well. Do women want to use it? Are they interested? Are they willing? How do you introduce it? And when you introduce it, who do you introduce it to? Is it the format that they really want? The challenges that we've had in many of these fields, in the clinical field, is there's not enough new options coming. When we provide women with contraceptive options, we've had very limited options. Each one of them has some challenge, some side effects, something that may not make it useful or make it an option for many women. So the question has always been, how do we have enough products coming in? We think about a supermarket approach. If you have many options, everybody finds something that works for them. When the options are limited, it's difficult because maybe you can't find something that works for you. So the investment in women's health and the investment in contraception has been limited. And perhaps because one of the challenges is many women, though we form such a large number in terms of the population base, our purchasing power perhaps has not been as high. So people don't invest in things that don't have a high return on investment. And so there's been a paucity in terms of just providing options. What can women have that will work for them in their various parts of life that they may be in? Raising awareness has also been a challenge. And then just community involvement. Contraception is not as simple as just one woman going in to take a product or a process that works for her. It's a whole community behind her. It's myths, misconceptions, community literacy, ensuring that even in the clinical trials, people have enough autonomy, have enough information to allow them to participate appropriately. And then when we find those methods that actually work, how do we make them accessible? How do we ensure that they can actually get to the people who need it and who can use it? So that's been part of the work that I've been doing. And it's been a challenge because it's an uphill battle every single part of the way, and getting enough new younger scientists who are interested, willing, and want to invest their time and effort in working in this area. I think my time is up, Griffins.
Thanks so much, Ibi. It's good to hear you call out the need for younger scientists coming into this space. So hoping for those of you who are listening, that's the call there. And then last, we have Busi Mafumulo from Wits University. So Busi, please tell us what you do in contraceptive research and highlight some of the challenges you have faced during your time in this space.
Yeah, thank you, Griffins, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for an opportunity. I've always said it's really not a good idea to be speaking after Professor Busi, yeah, because she really spoke a lot. And I think she mentioned most of the things that I was also going to touch on. As I've said, I have been, most of my life has been working in the Department of Health, is also a nurse, and working in the sexual and reproductive health clinic, providing mainly contraceptives. And I've also moved into research. I have been working on a few contraceptive trials as a study coordinator as well as a sub-investigator. And I think some of the work that is also Professor Bokusi have mentioned on, I've been part of the big trial, which is called ECHO trial, which was an open label, randomized clinical trial that was comparing HIV incidences as well as contraceptive benefits in women using the DMPA, laryngeal implant, as well as the IUD, copper IUD. And we're partnering with FHI and University of Washington, and also with Professor Bokis was part of the program. We further on went on to another study, which was a contraceptive use dynamics beyond ECHO now, where we're assessing the long-term user experiences and also method continuations in South Africa and also in Zambia. And that study also was done during the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was interesting also to see how all of a sudden the paradigm shift from women who were using the injectables now appreciating the long-acting contraceptives methods, since during the COVID-19, it was not easy to access the health facilities for contraceptives. So we kindly also look at the dynamics, how they change to the long-acting methods. And currently, I'm also currently a sub-investigator in a study, which is a DMPA XT study, which is a DMPA subcutaneous injection, which is given every 6 months. Have also been involved in various barrier method studies, like from the silk diaphragm to doing also the functionality and the acceptability studies of the new innovative designs of male and female condoms. It was very interesting designs. Our participants were really interested in having those designs, but of course we found it also, as Professor Bukisi has mentioned earlier on, then the implementation becomes a challenge. And we have also looked at the condoms, like the various designs, moving from the normal latex material to other materials like synthetic nitrile. When it comes to challenges, while building my career, for me, I am still in the building process, still currently studying, finishing up my master's. But I would say I am fortunate to have been exposed to many opportunities for my career advancements, including this webinar, to be the part of this webinar and to share the platform with the industry's experts. For me, it is a real an honor. I have a really good support and mentorship even for today. My biggest challenge, obviously, for me for now is balancing work, family life, and then studying. And when I look at the systemic challenges, I can say that it's to work in contraceptive research comes with the challenges, especially when it comes to regulatory or ethics approvals. You find that we have, especially in a country like my country in South Africa, where we have a high HIV incidences, and having to navigate those countries' regulatory requirements, that you cannot have comes a little bit difficult to do the research on efficacy of the new drug whilst having also to promote the dual protection and asking participants to use barrier methods while also looking at the efficacy of the new drug. So for me, that's the challenges that I've come across in my field. And of course, the funding has been the main limitation in our contraceptive research. I think for now, I'm going to stop there, Griffiths. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Busi. Really nice to hear things from your perspective. I love that you have highlighted work-family balance as a challenge in your career, and I agree totally. And it's nice to hear that being called out. So great, and thanks to all the presenters. I'm going to ask you a second question, and I'll go in the same order as we did for the first question. So I'll start with Margaret Ilomuanya first. And my question is, what more do you think needs to be done to leverage and to strengthen African leadership in contraceptive in innovation? During your time in contraception research or contraceptive research, what do you think should be done to strengthen and leverage leadership and to bring more African voices in contraceptive research leadership? Over to you.
Thank you, Griffins, for that question. And I think after listening to Professor Bukusi and the last speaker, there is a lot of work that has been done around the clinical area. So for me, to strengthen African leadership, first of all, we must change the narrative of what African innovation looks like, because a lot of times it's framed as frugal innovation or sometimes digital health apps, while those that are important, come not from that angle. So we need to show the world that African researchers are leading in nanotechnology, biomaterials, and actual product development. Leadership is strengthened when we are recognized as architects of the next generation of contraceptive delivery systems and not just as implementers of the current ones. Now, secondly, what would be really nice is for us to have regional centers of excellence for advanced pharmaceutics, where you have contraceptive R&D, hardware-intensive research being done. Strengthening leadership means ensuring that an innovator in Nigeria or in Kenya or in South Africa does not need to send their samples to Europe to see how nanofibers interact with protein. We need to invest in open labs where biomaterials can be properly characterized on the continent, where good manufacturing practice pilot labs are available. Fortunately, here at the University of Lagos, we have MedAfrica GMP Laboratory, which I believe is the only GMP laboratory domiciled within a university in West Africa for pilot manufacturing. This should be replicated in every region, because we can be able to do pilot manufacturing for clinical trials so that we don't lose the leadership of the value chain, especially when that technology is developed in Africa. Then next, we must lead in science. We must, whether we like it or not, because we are focused on the African continent, what people technically term the scientific reclamation of African bioresources. We must actually look at that, because we have massive competitive advantage in our biodiversity with botanicals and plants. So African leadership means being the ones to set the standards for how some of these herbal products are integrated into biomimetic delivery systems. So we cannot wait for Global North to isolate active compounds of our plants. We should be the ones applying nanomaterial science to these extracts and securing the intellectual property. We would define things like target product profiles that will emanate from some of these herbal products that can be obtained from our biodiversity. Then we need our regulatory bodies to harmonize. If we look at Nollywood, that's the people that do movies in Nigeria. A movie is released in Nigeria, it premieres everywhere in Africa. So if we have our regulatory bodies harmonizing, then we can have innovation being spread across the African continent in an even manner, such that when we have products released, there is that regulatory framework that allows us to have tech transfer across the African continent. Leadership is stifled when every country has a different requirement for a new biomaterial. So if we want African innovators to lead, we need a continental runway where the innovation that is proven in, say, Nigeria or Ghana can easily be tested and scaled across others. So and then the next thing is storytelling matters. We should consistently showcase African contraceptive innovators. And I think having this webinar is very critical and is the kind of thing that showcases the wonderful things that are done on the continent. Because these kinds of examples highlight conversations around African innovation. So young scientists can actually see a pathway, and funders and policymakers can see that Africa is not only a beneficiary of innovation, but also a significant driver of innovation. So if we invest in talent, invest in institutions, invest in translation, and we structure partnerships around equity, then I think African leadership in contraceptive innovation will move from being emerging to an undeniable, globally relevant influence. Thank you very much, Griffins.
Thanks, Margaret. And it's always nice to hear you speak about such things, because you present quite a number of important and things that are often left unsaid. I like the fact that you have said that African R&D and African researchers should not only be implementers of whatever is developed elsewhere, but should also be leading in the development of technology itself, the technology itself. That's really powerful, and I totally agree with you. And thanks for bringing that out. So next, I'll ask the same question to Busi. Busi, what do you think needs to be done to leverage and strengthen African leadership in contraceptive research and innovation?
Thank you, Griffins. I would say for me, for capacity development, I think for the good leadership plays a very crucial role in the success and also in the integrity of any research. So I'll say for me, if we can have targeted leadership programs to capacitate women leaders in the contraceptive research field, I am really impressed and really honored that all the presenters today are women, which also goes with us. No offense to you, Griffins. Yeah, because honestly, women leadership, especially in the contraceptive research, are really holding forth. So I think to capacitate them will be a good investment. And again, the collaboration, if we are building relationships and supporting other sites that are doing similar work, we'll also enable to share ideas as well. Like I'm looking at my fellow colleagues, the work that they are doing extremely important work. So if we can have also those platforms where we can also share ideas and be able to really have some partnerships. And again, for me, another thing that I feel that we can do to strengthen and leverage the African leadership in contraceptive innovation is to have more representation of the diverse population, to have more male participation in contraceptive research and interventions. We also will strengthen the innovation and also get ideas from them. That also applies also to adolescents. We're having some challenges also with most of the regulatory authorities in terms of including the adolescents in any clinical research per se, especially in adolescents. And I'm saying this also again because in my country, we're having a really crisis with high teenage pregnancy. So I guess, and I feel also including adolescents in contraceptive research will really do a lot of damage control for us, and including rural communities, and again also the LGBTQ population also to also have represented in our clinical trials. And lastly, for me, I will say, again, as I've touched on the challenges earlier on, also, I will also go and touch on funding again. I think we have seen, I'm not going to go back to the issue of the USAID. We know that what happens and the impacts it had on our clinical trials. So if we can have really sustainable funding and investing also in contraceptive innovation, and also have opportunities to scale up contraceptive research and investing in long-term behavioral studies. And thank you, Griffins.
Thanks, Bosi, for really valuable insights. And I've loved that you've called out the need to involve men in contraceptive research, something that is usually quite overlooked. So next, I'll ask you, Ibi, for your insights. What do you think needs to be done to strengthen African leadership in CT R&D?
I want to pick up from where Busi left, and she's talked about male involvement, which I think is really important because contraception is, for many, many people, a joint community decision making. But the reality of the fact is ultimately the person who carries the pregnancy is the woman. And so for me, the focus still needs to be, and I'm unapologetic about being an obstetrician gynecologist and with passion about women, because ultimately it's the woman. There are things we can talk about, be interested in, really want to do. And I like what Almas is working on in terms of even male fertility and infertility. But the woman who carries the pregnancy is really critical. And the reality is, it's important because if people do not have babies, we will become extinct. But the reality is we also need to ensure people have the babies when they want them, when they're ready, when they can take care of them and everything else. So what do we need to do? I'm vouching for, and I'll put all my votes in training. We have to train from the bench to the bedside across every single aspect of what training is needed. Those like Prof. Margaret who can do the basic, the material science, those like Almas who can actually really look at the biology. What are the things we still don't understand and still don't know and need to do more work on? We need to go all the way into the clinical trials and beyond, into the community, into the health systems. What is it that we can do better? For what we know is working, how can we ensure that it reaches those who need to get it? For what we don't know how it's working, how can we do better to ensure that we do understand? We do need to ensure that there are new products coming out. We do need to make sure that there's networking and collaboration and transdisciplinary work, because this is something you cannot do in a silo. You cannot do it by yourself. It really needs people to be able to work together. And to me, the training goes beyond just the technical skills. The wearer of the shoes knows where it pinches and where it hurts most. We must involve our end users. We must go back and understand it's not just about making beautiful products. What are these products that will work? What is it that fits in within the lifestyle of the women? What may work for an 18-year-old may not work for a 30-year-old, may not work for someone who's just about to go into menopause, or who was thinking she was going into menopause and then suddenly discovers the surprise baby she had not planned for has suddenly showed up on her doorstep. So we need to ensure that it's across the spectrum, the different life cycles and spaces that women are in, but also meet them at their different areas of need and meet them not just as a woman, but as was pointed out by Busi, the male involvement factor. What are the things that truly are able to make a difference? So we need to invest. We need foundations, we need bilateral investors, we need governments. Ultimately, the responsibility of every citizen is the government to which they are paying taxes and the individual where they belong and where they're working. We need to just put our money where our mouths are. So we need to be responsive to the needs of the citizens because, again, within the African subcontinent, we have such rich diversity, so many different options that are simply not explored because no one is putting in enough effort of finding out these new products or these new opportunities that may be able to make a difference in the lives of women. If we can find these products, we can find how it fits in with the lifestyle of these women, we can train people who can meet all the different needs, including those regulators that Margaret talked about. We can't leave the ethics and the issues of regulation behind because they fit right squarely into the need to be able to make a difference for women.
Thanks, Ibi. Thanks so much. And I agree with you on the need to get everybody involved and make sure that the governments are also aware of the needs of the R&D needs and contribute to the resources required for R&D. And so my last presenter, Almas, I'll ask you the same question. What do you think needs to be done in your opinion? What more needs to be done to leverage and strengthen African leadership in CT R&D?
Thank you, Dr. Manguro. The disadvantage of going last is I might be a bit repetitive, but I will give it a shot. Like the previous speakers have spoken about increased funding. There's a big gap in funding, and there has been an over-reliance on external donors, and we learned our lesson recently from what happened with USAID. So we need to convince our governments to invest more in contraceptive research and development. This would not only reduce the reliance on external donors, but it also empowers us to shape our priorities, because as we're all aware, a lot of the calls that come from external donors some of them are quite specific on what needs to be done, when we perhaps want to focus on other areas that are more focused on our local needs. So if we can create innovation funds for contraceptive R&D here that are being funded by our own government, this would allow us to set our own agendas based on our local needs and not external interests. Like Dr. Margaret spoke about, creating centers of excellence. I think this is so important, so that we put Africa on a higher level, I guess, in terms of leadership, like the question refers to, so that we're not just participating or contributing, but actually leading in terms of contraception R&D. We have institutes like ours and many others, Kemri, etc., that have the expertise. They just need to be, I guess, taken a higher notch in terms of, for us, for example, at the Kenya Institute of Primate Research, we have the facility. We just need to go at a higher notch in terms of equipping ourselves with better equipment, equipping our labs to enable us to do high-level research. On top of that, Professor Bukusi mentioned focusing on the needs of the citizen. Now, how do you leverage institutes like ours that are already, we are government, we are within the Ministry of Health. For us in particular, we're within the State Department of Public Health. So we should be able to reach out to the citizens when we're even as part of, I guess, the research process. When we're designing our studies, we should incorporate the citizen opinions within our research development. In terms of training, yes, I agree, we need to build and retain, not only build, but retain talent. And that involves starting with the youth, increasing funding for PhDs, postdocs, specialized training in reproductive biology, so that we can have more people in this field. Like I mentioned, we've lost a lot of people in reproductive biology in our institute. We'd like to build up our team again and retain them within the institute. So mentorship programs from other African scientists, like our wonderful panel here, if we could all find a way to network, stay connected, and mentor our youth, we can build a nice little leadership within the African context. I can't go without mentioning that the Frontiers in Reproduction and the Society of the Study of Reproduction and Gates are holding the very first African workshop, which is going to be based at our institute. And this is phenomenal, because we'll be training young scientists from across Africa on the cellular and molecular basis of contraception. This is a big step towards, working towards increasing African leadership in contraception R&D. And like the previous speakers have said, creating pipelines, centers of excellence across the different levels of contraception R&D, and working together towards a common goal is very important. So leveraging on each other's strengths, I would say, across the entire contraception R&D. And I can't fail to mention how, in terms of our cultural context, have the stigma, especially with male contraception, that still exists within male contraception and contraception in general. So addressing the myths, the stigma, and the cultural concerns around contraception is a big step towards also convincing our people and our governments on the importance of contraception R&D. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Almas, and thank you all presenters. Today we've had a really interesting group of presenters, all female presenters, as Busi rightfully noted, plus Griffins added there. But thanks to you, Almas, to Margaret, to Ibi, and to Busi. It's also interesting that it has not only been just all female presenters, but it's been presenters of all career stages, from early career to mid career to late career, and it's good to see. It's good to hear from the perspectives of the entire spectrum. A couple of things that have come out. One is that funding for R&D needs to be increased. And I like, as Margaret has put it, the funding shouldn't just be for knowledge, attitude, and practice, but the funding should also be for the development of contraceptive products themselves. I think it's important to note that African researchers and African institutions themselves have the capacity to carry out research and to develop novel products and take them through the product development pathway through registration and through product introduction in country. I think quite often a lot of the research is focused on understanding behavior and everything else, which, while very important, the ability of research institutions and African researchers to develop products is often underestimated and underexplored. And I think this is one area that this webinar brings out very clearly. I think the other thing is also the question of new contraceptive options. As EB said, there's a paucity of novel contraceptives, and with that comes a limited choice. And increasing or expanding method choice is one really big priority, so that you can serve as many women's needs as possible, and so that we can have women's needs met, and this also increases the uptake, the contraceptive uptake in women. The question of bringing in new and younger investigators has also come up. I think this is one of those places and one of those areas where there needs to be really a great drive to get in younger people and newer people engaging in this kind of research. If you compare contraceptive technology research to HIV research, for example, there's quite there has been a growth of HIV researchers, and there's always been an increase in young people getting into HIV research. And I think CT research is one of those places where we haven't had as big a drive of young and newer investigators. So it's great that that has come up. Thanks very much, Almas, for bringing out the training on the frontiers in reproduction training at the Kenya Institute of Primate Research. And I think the Kenya Medical Research Institute and the National Academy of Medicine also have in place their training in leadership and excellence in women's health, accelerating leadership and excellence in women's health. That's currently taking applications. So thanks very much, our presenters, and to all of you who've been participating. It's great to have your participation. Unfortunately, we didn't have time for Q&A from the audience, but I hope that you have the contacts of the organizers, and you can also get in touch with the presenters themselves if there's anything that they have said that's interesting or inspiring to you. Otherwise, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your afternoon, the rest of your morning, and see you next time. Thank you.